across the clock. I can see your mouse hand go across the clock.
Really? It picks that up?
Yeah. You must have been in the other browser.
No, from here.
Wait.
I've even gone back to the other one. I went to here,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't show that.
No, go back to the... Go ahead and drag it across here.
You should see a blue.
You can see it when you it's just on the clock. It's only the clock. If you go across the screen on the clock, I can see it.
If I highlight that, and you can see.
Yeah, then I can see your mouse. 9 minutes. All right. It's gonna be fun. We got people in the chat room already. I don't know if you can see that.
Unable to connect to chat.
There it is.
Okay. Wonder why I wouldn't do that.
Drag that into a reasonably sized pop out. I don't know if that's going to be too small to watch or what.
No, I can read it.
Okay. There's going to be a lot of nonsense.
Yeah.
Check this. Oh shit, my notes. I got my notes printed.
What?
Illusions special members, welcome to the Grand Illusions Library. Welcome to my private library, hidden in the back of the shop, usually. Glad to have you here. Welcome everyone. Thank you all for coming and joining us for the very, very first Grand Illusions Teach-In webinar on the DieTube. Not only the very first teach-in webinar, but this one will happen to be on the DieTube. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd also like to thank the guy you're not going to see during the broadcast who's doing all the hard work over here behind the screens. That's my good friend and my engineer, Robert. Thank you, Robert. Big round of applause from the gallery for Robert. Yeah, we can hear you. Thanks for clapping. Yeah, we can hear you. That's great. As I said, welcome, and this is the first ever teach-in at Grand Illusions. We're going to be learning how to use a DieTube. And the question is, what the hey is a DieTube? Is it something new? Well, actually, no. It's something really, really old. It goes back to the late 1930s, early 1940s, and there were a whole lot of versions of DieTubes. There were ones that looked like eggs. There were ones that were on pulls that would go back into your clothing. There were ones with a ribbon on the inside that our great friend Roger Klaus recently well, I'm getting old, a decade ago, reinvented with his routine red and white. And then there's the Rice Simplex DieTube, which is the one we're going to be talking about this evening. The Rice Simplex tube was created by magician Harold Rice. And before we go any further with that, I don't want to sell this man short, because he was a lot more than a magician. He was an educator, he was a scholar, he was an author, he was a teacher, and he was a fantastic magician. Author of maybe a dozen books, including Rice's Encyclopedia of Silk Magic. There are 3 volumes of these. They're brilliant. If you don't have them and you're into silks, get them. Harold Rice's creation, the DieTube, was a simplex DieTube, a Rice Simplex DieTube. Harold sought to really simplify the prop and take a lot of the gaff out of it and the difficulty out of it. And so he made a DieTube that was very simply a tube. And it's not just a tube, it's got ends that are curved inward with a hydraulic press called swaging. And so the ends go in and they have a little lip on the inside of the tube, and that prevents the silk from popping out when you don't want it to, and it also allows you to grip the tube with the pad of your fingers. We're going to learn to do in just a moment in a move called clip. There's only 4 moves to use the DieTube. We'll start with clip. I'm going to place my middle finger inside one end of the DieTube, really doesn't matter which end, and I'm going to clip it, pulling it against the palm of my hand. So I've got kind of an I love you going on here in sign language, and I've got a clip with the tube right here. Now if I was to turn the back of my hand toward my audience, that would be you now, you would no longer be able to see my DieTube. I'm going to give you the exposed view again. There's the DieTube. There it isn't. And I can point over here, and I can relax my body. I think I'm below the camera now, but if I relax my hands, you won't see the DieTube here in my palm. This is clip, and we're going to use clip an awful lot. We're going to come back to clip all the time. This is how we're going to carry the DieTube away and how we're going to carry the DieTube into the scene when we want to use it. So, clip. The second move is load. Load is where we secretly put the DieTube into our hands. Clip. Load comes in from the side by just barely opening the fingers of the opposite hand. When I perform this and when I teach this, I'm going to say right hand and left hand just because I'm used to saying right hand and left hand. When you're performing the DieTube in particular, it doesn't matter which hand you use. There's a lot of magic out there that would require you to use a right hand specifically or a left hand specifically, but the DieTube isn't one of them. So when I say right hand and you feel like whipping the whole thing around to a left-handed routine, feel free to translate that later. So my secondary hand, the hand not clipping, is going to be my left for explanation, and the hand clipping the DieTube will be my right during this explanation. Feel free to switch that if you need to. Load means I'm going to loosen the grip of my left hand just enough to allow a doorway for the DieTube to come into that hand, like that. And so I'm going to load the DieTube in, bring my finger out, and I've loaded it. To do that covertly, of course, we keep the back of my right hand toward you, the audience, and the back of my left hand toward you, the audience. I'll load in real time without flashing. I hope without flashing. There's clip, and that's a load. The DieTube would now be in my left hand. The opposite of a load is a steal. A steal is just exactly what you think. We're going to take that tube away without our audience knowing about it. So, clip, load. Steal comes out of the top of your left hand. Lift upward, and you've stolen back into clip. Load, steal. Right? Everybody with me? I heard a resounding yes. So let's move onward. Clip, load, steal. Let me do those without the revealed view, right? That would be a load and a steal. Load, steal, clip, right? Cool. Let's do some magic. I got to go backstage for a moment. Pay no attention to the man behind the green curtain. Hey, want to see a magic trick? I'm going to show you Patrick Page's routine. And in a little bit, I'm going to teach you my routine as well. The routine, if you purchased a dye tube from Grand Illusions, it came with some instructions on how to do a 3-scarf change. That's my own personal routine. I'm proud of it. It's a good trick, but it's not Patrick Page. I will never be Patrick Page. Patrick Page was a great master and a brilliant creator of magic. So I'm going to teach you his routine first, and if I were you, I'd probably do Patrick Page's routine. I couldn't put his routine in my instructions because that would be plagiarism and unconscionable to one of our masters, so I wrote my own, which as I said is good, but it ain't Patrick Page. So let's watch Patrick Page's routine, as done badly by Steve Johnson. This is a trick with a scarf. That's the scarf. If you pack the scarf into your hand and snap your fingers, it changes color and turns into a red scarf. So it goes in yellow and it comes out red. It goes in yellow and it comes out red. It goes in yellow, it comes out red. It goes in yellow, it comes out red. And that's a trick with a scarf. What do you think? Do you want to learn that? Oh, I can hear you. Yeah, here's the secret. I'll tell you. There's really 2 scarves. Oh, you knew, didn't you? All right, here's the real secret. Backstage, when no one's looking, you pack the red scarf into your empty left hand. This is the secret preparation part of the trick. You do this in the bedroom, in the bathroom, behind the drapes, wherever you can hide. Now, once the red scarf is completely out of sight, you take the yellow one out of your pocket, walk into the living room, and you're ready to perform the trick. Now, remember, you have a red scarf secretly hidden in your left hand, so always keep your left hand closed, or the audience will know that you have 2 scarves. Now, since you packed the red one in there backstage in your secret preparation, you can pack the yellow one in the top, snap your fingers, and pull the red one out the bottom. So the yellow one goes in the top, the red one comes out the bottom, the yellow in the top, the red one out the bottom. Oh, this is important. Don't pull the red one all the way out. They'll know you have 2 scarves. So keep packing the yellow one into your hand all the way until it's completely out of sight. Then you can put the red one in your pocket, and you're amazing. Oh, of course, you now have a yellow scarf secretly hidden in your left hand, so remember, always keep your left hand closed. Any questions? I gotta tell you, it's really weird performing just for a camera, because right now, normally, I would see my audience go, "What the what? Oh my goodness, it's incredible!" Wait, I'll listen. Oh yeah, I can hear you guys doing it. Thank you so much for the round of applause. So as you can tell in Patrick Page's brilliant routine, he apparently teaches the audience how to do it, but it's a ruse. He's really just fooling the audience for a second time. So forgive me for apparently explaining it to you while I was still in the routine. I'll actually, honestly, explain it to you now. We've got our dye tube, and we do have 2 scarves, a red and a yellow. Backstage, when no one's looking, when I walked off camera, I stuffed the red scarf into the dye tube. As such. And then I put it in clip. Now, of course, I'm going to relax my body so the back of my hand is toward you. I'm only turning my hand toward you so that you can see that I have it in clip. So, audience doesn't know we have a dye tube. Audience doesn't know we have a red scarf in our dye tube. Audience doesn't know that we have our dye tube in right-hand clip. I'm going to hold the yellow scarf by its 2 corners with my dye tube clipped. Pardon my turning my back to my camera, but I do want you to see where the dye tube is, and it is absolutely concealed by the audience, from the audience by the scarf. So in Patrick's routine, he says that's the scarf, and then he loads. So I'm going to bring my hands together, and the dye tube is going to go right into my palm, right into my left hand, just there. Now, there is a mistake you can make here that I made when I performed it for you the first time, and that is, as you bring your hands together, don't get the scarf caught in between your hand and the dye tube. I wound up squishing all that scarf, and now I was in a bit of a pickle. I was kind of struggling to get the scarf free of the dye tube. So learn from my mistake just a few minutes ago, and as you load, make sure the tube goes into your hand without the scarf going into your hand as such. So from the front side, I load. So I've got the dye tube now in my left hand. I start pushing the yellow scarf into the top, snap my fingers, and start pulling the red scarf out the bottom. Put the yellow in, pull the red out. Push the yellow in, pull the red out. One of the more tricky parts of this presentation is I'm going to want the red scarf free of the tube, but not out of my hand. So be careful when you're performing the first stage of Patrick Page's routine not to pull the red scarf all the way out of the tube. Just get it loose, right? Still clipped by your fingers, but still loose there out of the tube. And that means as you're packing the yellow in, you can go ahead and do your steel. I'm going to do that without the flash, hopefully. And then I'll do that with exposed view. I did that right there. I'm just going to insert my middle finger and lift straight up into clip, stealing the die tube. I'll do that with a proper angle one more time for you. This is what your audience should see. In goes the yellow scarf, and here's the steal. I took it. Keep that left hand closed because that's a nice suspense moment. You can remember you got a yellow scarf in your hand, right? Closed. I got ahead of myself. You just should make it vanish. So in Patrick Page's routine, we've started with a yellow scarf. We've magically changed it into a red, and the audience is saying, "Oh, that's amazing." And we're going to now apparently explain it to them. We are such liars. You say, "Do you want to see how that works?" Right? And Patrick loads the die tube into his hand and brings his right hand up and says, "What do you think?" Right? He's looking for an applause cue. But what he's really doing here, guys, is he's not showing his hand empty, which is a bit offensive to your audience's intelligence. I'm trying very hard to get this out of my act. We all grow up in magic showing our hands this way. But if you just gesture naturally, the audience can see your hands are empty without you going, "Look, nothing in my hands," which is a bit over the top. So in this routine, in Patrick Page's routine, he has a number of points where he's showing his hands empty without showing his hands empty. So one of those is right at the end when it turns into a red scarf. He immediately reloads the yellow and says, "What do you think? Do you want to learn how to do that?" And everybody goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'll tell you the truth." He lies. There's really two scarves. Now what we're doing, we're pulling the yellow scarf out of the die tube. Just a quick fact check. I've got the red scarf in my left hand, I've got the yellow scarf in my right hand, and I've got the die tube hidden in my left palm. So there's really two scarves, and your audience goes, "Yeah, we knew that, bozo." You go, "Oh, you knew that. Here, this is the real secret. Backstage, when no one's looking, you pack the yellow scarf into your hand. What you're actually doing is packing it into the die tube, of course. When you get to the bottom of the scarf, steal. Backstage, when no one's looking, you pack the yellow scarf into your hand, steal. Then you take the red scarf out of your pocket, walk in the living room, and you're ready to perform the trick." Fact check. They don't know that. They're just the audience. But remember, you have a yellow scarf in your left hand, so always keep your left hand closed. And your audience goes, "What?" While they're reeling from that, you load. Since you put the yellow one in backstage, you tell your audience, you can pack the red one in the top, snap your fingers, and pull the yellow one out the bottom. Again, your audience goes, "What?" Because they just saw your hands empty. So it goes in red and it comes out yellow, it goes in red and it comes out yellow. Now, as I said a few minutes ago, one of the hardest parts of this is we now want the bottom silk free from the tube, but still held by our little finger so it doesn't pop out and they can see we have two scarves. But since we're now explaining the trick, Patrick Page has a brilliant bit of business here to get the yellow scarf free. All you have to do is advise your audience not to pull it all the way out. He says, "Oh, this is important. Don't take it all the way out of your hand. The audience will know you have two silks." And what did he do? He just freed the silk from the tube. The guy's a genius. So I'm going to stick this right back under my pinky, and I'm going to continue to pack the red scarf into my hand. And steal, right? So at this point, Patrick Page has said, "Look, it goes in yellow, it comes out red, it goes in yellow, it comes out red. You take the red one, and you put it in your pocket, and you're amazing." Of course, now you have a red scarf in your hand, so always keep your left hand closed. And then he gestures again. Any questions? Once again, showing his hands empty without showing his hands empty. It's a good thing to try to practice. I certainly am trying to practice that. So I'm going to go through that routine one more time as performed for you guys, because it got kind of tedious there during the explanation. And I think you should see the rhythm of the trick. So backstage, I'm going to take my yellow scarf and pack it into my die tube. So I've got my yellow scarf in the tube, and I've got that tube in clip. Then I've got my red scarf, dye tube and clip, red scarf. Let's get a good angle for our audience. And this is what the routine would look like in actual performance. Let me show you a trick with a scarf. That's the scarf. If I pack the scarf into my hand and snap my fingers, it magically turns into a yellow scarf. So it goes in red, but it comes out yellow. It goes in red, and it comes out yellow. It goes in red, and it comes out yellow. And that's a trick with a scarf. What do you think? Do you want to learn how to do that? Well, I'll tell you the secret. There's really 2 scarves. Oh, you knew, huh? All right, well, here's the secret. Backstage, here's how you do it. Pack the yellow scarf into your left hand. You can do this in the bedroom, the bathroom, behind the drapes, wherever you can hide. Now, once the yellow scarf is out of sight, you can take the red scarf out of your pocket, and you're ready to do the trick. Of course, you have a yellow scarf secretly hidden in your left hand, so remember, always keep your left hand closed, or the audience will know that you have 2 scarves. Now, since you packed the yellow one in there backstage, you can pack the red one in the top while you're performing, snap your fingers, and pull the yellow one out the bottom. Ha! It goes in red, it comes out yellow, it goes in red, it comes out yellow. Oh, this is important. Don't pull the yellow one all the way out of your hand. The audience will know you have 2 scarves. So keep packing the red one in until it's completely out of sight, and then you can put the yellow one in your pocket, and you're amazing. Of course, now you have a red scarf in your left hand, so remember, always keep your left hand closed. Any questions? And that's Patrick Page's. Thank you, Patrick Page, for that beautiful routine, that gift you gave to magic. It's marvelous. Robert, my wonderful engineer and friend over here, has a lot of jobs while he's engineering the video and audio, but he's also trying to watch that chat feed. So if you have any questions along the way, how about we do him a favor and try to watch other questions. Let's not ask the same question twice. But if you could put maybe the first part of your question in cap, it would stand out, and he might be able to see it. If we don't see the question, I'm sorry, we tried. They're going by kind of quickly in the chat feed, and we'll do our very best to catch any questions. This will be rebroadcast. If we've done our homework correctly, I believe I have, this will be saved and rebroadcast under a hidden URL on YouTube, and I'll be able to answer a lot of your questions in the comments. So please go ahead and ask them, and if we missed you, you can email me those questions. I'd be happy to answer them either in email or in the comments on this video. So let's move on. Routine number 2 is my routine, and it uses 3 scarves. And I'm just going to prep this right in front of you. I could step off the camera, but we're all friends here, right? Gonna pack it in. In goes this one. For this effect, I'm using 3 scarves in the tube, and I have 3 12-inch scarves. That's going to be snug. I would really prefer to use 3 9s, but I ran out of time and I couldn't run around to the corner to the local magic shop and get another 9-inch silk. So I'm just going to forcibly stuff my 3 12s into this tube, and okay, that should do. Let's do the trick that I made up, and it's the one that's in your instructions if you purchased a dye tube from me. You start with empty hands, and from empty we produce 1 scarf. Yellow. But change color, and we get red. So it goes in yellow, comes out red, goes in yellow, comes out red, goes in yellow, comes out red. But hey, why stop there? White. Doing the laundry here. Let's get all the stains out of this lovely white silk. It goes in red, it comes out white, it goes in red, it comes out white, and that's a trick with a scarf. What do you think? Do you like it? Yeah. Yeah. Do we have a question? Oh, we have a question from the gallery. Yay!
Murray asks, how big is the opening of the dye tube you're using?
Oh, that's a very good question. This was a 1-inch ID, interior diameter tube, aluminum tube. This is the large size from Grand Illusions. If you purchased one from me recently, and you did, Murray, thank you for your business, you have one of these originally 1-inch ID aluminum tubes. Now, we have swaged it in ever so slightly, so it's a bit less than an inch. A bit less. I'd say maybe 7/8. I'm going to guess on that. I'd have to go back and get my micrometer and actually look in, but it should be just a bit less than an inch. If I clip it against my hand, and I'm really glad you asked that, Murray, because I was going to forget to say this. If I'm not pressing against my palm, that tube will fall right off my finger. It's loose enough that it will not stay on my finger unless I'm pressing it against my palm. Now, we all have different thickness digits out there. So some of you may have more slender fingers. You'll have to grip a little harder. Some of you may have thicker fingers. You might not put quite as much of your finger into the tube. Or you might use your ring finger instead of your middle. I find that a little bit awkward because these muscles aren't quite as easy to use as the middle finger muscles. Fill in your own joke there. So I'm using my middle and I'm clipping. But the answer is a wee bit less than an inch. Wee bit less than an inch. And hello in Oregon, Murray. So my routine is I'm going to put all three of these into the tube. If you have a smaller tube, we used to sell a smaller tube as well, or if you have a dye tube that isn't a Grand Illusions tube, you might not be able to get three 12-inch silks into there. You might be able to get three 9s in. Definitely three 6-inch silks, which are harder to get, but Grand Illusions still has them. So in goes the white, and that's going into the tube. In goes the white. Boom. And then in goes the yellow, or whatever order you want them to come out in. I designed a routine with the dye tube for a pastor customer of mine who wanted to have a Bible lesson. And so the first silk was black, and then that was sin, and then the second silk was red, and that was the blood of the Lord, and then the third silk was white, and that was forgiveness. And this is a good example of pick three colors and write a routine around it. Is it red, white, and blue? Are you going to Mexico and it's red, yellow, and green soon? Red, white, and blue is also France, so you can visit there. But if you wanted to do a patriotic routine, pick the three colors of the country or the two colors of the country, or you get the idea. You can write your routine based on the colors you have, or choose your colors based on your story. So I've unceremoniously stuffed my scarves into my dye tube. And I don't like to leave them in there very long. This is not an overnight or an all-week thing. Those silks are going to get nasty, wrinkled up, ratty. And when they're all wrinkled up and ratty, it looks like they were stuffed into an impossibly small area, which they are. So we don't want them to look like that all the time. You can Google how to iron silk, and it's usually a steam iron through a towel is what I do. But you can take the crinkles out of these if you want to. So now I've got just barely enough room because I've got 12-inch silks in the end of the tube for me to clip that into my clip, and I'm ready to do my performance of my own routine. So the only move that I'm doing that wasn't in the previous routine is I'm doing the display to show my hands empty. If you go to grandillusions.com/dyetube, you will find this move in slow motion. If you can't find it, email me. I'd be happy to help you locate it. But this move is I'm pointing with the dye tube palmed in my right hand at my left palm. And I've turned my body just slightly to my left. And I'm going to show that palm. Then I'm going to turn my body an equilateral distance to my right. And as I do, my left hand is going to close like a door right here. And this allows me, I'm going to give you the exposed view. This allows me to open my right hand and clip that tube with my left thumb. So that move would be close the door of your left hand, shift the tube into your left hand, put your thumb on it, and keep going so that now your left hand is pointing at your right palm. I'm going to do that at real speed with the proper angles for you guys. There's the tube. If I do this properly, you won't see my tube. Left hand, right hand, and I swivel the tube sideways so it's vertical once again, and I can pull the first silk out. Now, you probably know the rest, but we're going to go through it anyway. You pack the first silk into the top of the dye tube. You snap your fingers to make it look magic, say your magic word, hocus pocus, chicken bones chocus, and out comes the yellow. In goes the white, out comes the yellow. Once again, don't pull it all the way out, right? The hardest part of this is keeping it clipped by your fingers without coming out of your hand. Free it from the tube, but not from your hand. So it goes in white, get that white all the way out of sight, and pull the yellow one free. We're not done though, we got a third scarf, so we're going to pack the yellow one in the top, and pull the red one out the bottom. Boy, they're in there snug. Yellow in the top, red out the bottom. Now I can feel that I've got the red one clear of the tube already. So I'm going to go ahead and steal. Right there. I've taken my tube. I take my scarf, I put it in my pocket, and that's the end of the trick. So, let's do that pass move one more time. There's the tube. Let me do that from the exposed view. I don't have a monitor, so I'm hoping that you guys can see this okay. Robert can see it, so if I look awful, he'll tell me. There, and across. Yeah, I am getting a thumbs up from my engineer, so it must have looked good. And that's the front view. Okay, we don't go backward and we don't go back and forth. That's not only is it redundant, you don't need to go back and forth, but it's really hard to get your finger back in the tube and switch back to your left hand. So don't do that. Just do that pass one time. That's good enough. Swivel that tube sideways, and you're doing the trick. If there's questions you guys have, we'll shout them out in the gallery now. Let's see here what my notes say.
Question.
Yes.
Leland, he had asked, what the difference between the large tube and the small tube?
Just the size. The difference was I had a lot of kids coming into the shop who were mentally and physically perfectly capable of performing a die tube. They were definitely old enough to understand it, but their hands were very small, slender. Their fingers were slender. And this sucker is just huge. I mean, it's a monster. It's bigger than their thumbs. So we did make one size smaller. It was, I believe, a 3/4 inch interior tube and swage down, and that was for people with much more slender fingers. If you've purchased a die tube from our website in the last couple of months, you definitely have a large. Definitely have a large. That's all I've been sending out to everyone. So you've got one that's probably just a little less than a 1-inch tube, and it'll fit on the average middle finger just like that. So let's talk about some of those gestures that Patrick Page did. He's got his tube here. I'm just going to omit the silks for just a moment. He's got the tube here, and he's got the scarf, and he loads, and then he does the whole routine, and then he steals the tube over to here, and when he opens his hand, he reloads and says, "Any questions?" And he's got the scarf here, and he's showing his hand empty. I just love that maneuver. I think it's brilliant. And then he pretends to explain it all to you, and in the very end, after he steals the tube, and he takes the scarf and puts it in his pocket, he says, always keep your left hand closed, and then this gesture, "Are there any questions?" He's once again showing us his hands empty without showing us his hands empty, which is just well thought out. And I try to approach my magic with the examples of these great masters who thought every move through so it would look natural. It wasn't a move. Didn't look like a move. In my routine, I've got some moves. I need to work on it and make it as polished as Patrick's. Oh, fingers crossed. We're coming up at the half-hour mark, and while I thought this might go on longer, I've gone through the material. If anyone in Chatland out there would like to see either of those routines again or hear either of those explanations again, I'd be happy to go through it. But otherwise, I think we're coming to the end of our very first broadcast. There's a 10-second delay on this broadcast, and so I'm going to chat here for about 10 or 15 seconds before, so that you guys out in the listener land can actually hear what I said 15 seconds ago about wanting to go through it again and have an opportunity to chat that in. So I'm going to play with my die tube and see if you all have any questions while the video catches up. Pack, pack, pack. Pack, pack, pack. Steal. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'll do Patrick's routine with subtitles, okay? Every time I look up at you guys and go, or say it in the magician voice, "Steal," you'll know that's a footnote. So let's do Patrick's routine with a yellow and a red scarf. So red's in the tube, and I've got it in clip, and I've got the yellow one here. The audience shouldn't be able to see that as I've got the tube, as I've got my right hand back toward it. So I'm going to actually perform Patrick Page's routine with his patter, and I'm going to kind of subtitle off to the side for you guys, all right? Here's the act. Let me show you a trick with a scarf, and if you like it and give me a big round of applause, I'll teach you how it works. This is a trick with the scarf. That's the scarf. Load. If I pack the scarf into the top of my hand and snap my fingers, it turns into a red scarf. So it goes in yellow, and it comes out red. It goes in yellow, and it comes out red. Free the red scarf from the tube. It goes in yellow, comes out red, goes in yellow, steal. Comes out red, and that's a trick with a scarf. Load. What do you think? Is that amazing? Well, I'll tell you how it works. There's really two scarves. Oh, you knew. All right, here's the backstage prep. When no one's looking, you pack the yellow scarf into your empty left hand. Into the die tube. Into your empty left hand. Steal. Once the tube is completely out of sight, you can take the red scarf out of your pocket and you're ready to do the trick. Of course, you have a yellow scarf in your hand, so remember, always keep your left hand closed. Or they'll know that you have two silks. Load. I just loaded. I was trying to say two silks and load at the same time. It didn't work. Since you packed the yellow one in backstage, you can pack the red scarf in while you're performing and pull the yellow one out the bottom. So it goes in red, it comes out yellow, it goes in red, it comes out yellow, it goes in red. Oh, don't pull the yellow one all the way out because then they'll know you have two scarves. So keep packing the red one in until it's completely out of sight. Steal. And then you can put the yellow one in your pocket with the tube, and you're amazing. Of course, now you have a red scarf in your hand, so remember, always keep your left hand closed. Any questions? If you go to grandillusions.com and you look for the product Die Tube, you will find my routine. You'll also find a nested video of YouTube of Patrick Page performing. It's not an explanation video, but now that you know what a clip, a load, and a steal are, you have X-ray vision. You can see right through his hands, you can see right through my hands, and you'll be able to see where the load is, where the steal is, and when he's ditching and when he's loading. It's very, very clever. When you watch it, learn the routine, sure, but again, pay particular attention to how he gestures and how he holds his hands and how he holds his body. He doesn't pace. He doesn't stand on one hip. His posture is perfect. His gestures are perfect. Every beat of that routine has been thought out to the nth degree. I recommend you study it as a piece of art, as a piece of theater. Yeah. Questions?
Leland is asking if you sell a Blendo set of silks for the DieTube.
That's a clever, yes. Since we're in liquidation, I'm not sure what's in our inventory without going and checking, but I'm pretty sure we still have what they call a thumb tip Blendo, which would actually work really nicely with a DieTube, Leland. You would, for those of you who don't know what a Blendo is, and thanks for bringing that up, Lee, imagine a scarf that is 4 small scarves stitched together. So it's, let's say, a red, blue, yellow, green, 4 squares in the 4 quadrants of the silk, red, blue, yellow, green. And then you would have 4 little tiny scarves that size, a red, blue, yellow, green. So the 4 Blendo, the 4-way scarf, would go into your DieTube first. I'll get it. The Blendo scarf, this would be the 4-color scarf, would go into your DieTube first. All right. And then you'd take your individual scarves, the little ones, and you'd pack them in one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd pull the big scarf out the bottom. The audience would see it's all blending together. You'd get it free of the tube. You'd pack the last scarf in steel, and you would now have all 4 apparently merged together, and the 4 little scarves would be inside of the tube to go into your pocket. No reason why you couldn't use a Blendo, Leland. I think that would be a fine idea. It would be a very cool trick. And yeah, a DieTube should work. Which brings me to another point. We all have a thumb tip, right? If you show anyone a scarf trick, they'll immediately say, "Oh, you got that fake thumb, huh?" Because there's no fewer than, I'd say, 2,000 YouTube videos exposing a thumb tip. It's everywhere. So what do we do about, gosh, we can't use a thumb tip for a Blendo, we can't use a thumb tip for a color change, we can't use a thumb tip for a vanish because the public knows about it because of the internet and social media. They don't know about this. Our secret weapon, the DieTube, lost in the dusty annals of magic history. They don't have this, and this is not exposed all over YouTube. And this video you're watching now will be hidden. You have to have the link to watch it. If you have the link, you're a magician. You get to watch it. If you don't have the link, too bad. You're a layperson. You don't get to watch it. I'm going to pause here to catch up on questions, but I think we're coming to the end of the broadcast. By all means, guys, if you enjoyed this, and I really hope you did, send me email. If you have suggestions on how to make this better, please send me email. You could comment on this video, but email steve@grandillusions.com will reach me much more directly. I check that every few minutes. I'm going to be checking my email. And the YouTube video I won't see but once or twice a week. So by all means, shoot me an email if you have any suggestions, comments, criticisms, and if you have suggestions for another one of these. I'm already planning to do a teach-in on the Aikido box, I believe, next, and I've got a lot of suggestions for coin magic and other card tricks. So if you've got ideas for these teach-ins, if you enjoyed it, send me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. And on that note, I believe, you got any more questions in the gallery, Robert?
Oh, just what is a thumb tip?
What is a thumb tip? If you don't know, you're not supposed to. Not supposed to. You guys in the chat room answer that. Because I think it might have been asked facetiously. It's right here. The tip of my thumb. There it is. All right, gang. Once again, thank you so much for coming out and listening to this broadcast. I'm glad it was a little briefer than I thought it was. I think we conveyed an awful lot of information in the 35 minutes that we've been together. And we'll be doing this again shortly. Stay tuned to that email list, and I'll let you know when and where the next broadcast will be. Until then, Steve Johnson, Grand Illusions. Big thanks to my good friend and engineer, Robert Lamp, for being on the other side of the keyboard. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.